Hi everyone, welcome back. Can you help me a minute and get the people to put their coffee down and get back in the room? So let's, if we could just clap a little bit and make it sound like, yay! Yes, folks, you're missing things. Echo Emo, come. Well, we'll let them trail in. Our next speaker is a veteran marketer and a sought-after speaker. I first met Tami Cannizzaro a year or so ago at another conference, and I was immediately struck by her individuality, her personality, and at the time she was working for IBM. And meeting Tami sort of crystallized the transformation of IBM to me, because this was not the person that I had recalled 20 years ago working at IBM. From there, Tami left to go to eBay, where she's now a senior director of marketing. But we also lived briefly in the same town in Westchester, New York, which is probably, unfortunately, more prominently known as the home of the Clintons. But Tami and I, we're trying, and so whatever. But with that, welcome, Tami.
Well, thanks so much for having me here. It's a beautiful day in Chicago. Is it always this warm in Chicago? No, right? Although it's cold in this room. So hopefully everyone should stay awake. That's great. We'll keep turning the temperature down with these eyes. So I'm going to talk today about the new rules of customer engagement, and just probe a little bit on the fact that human behavior, as we're all painfully aware, has changed so dramatically. But yet, oftentimes, and I'm often guilty of this myself, when we look at our marketing practices and our discipline and our organizations, have we really shifted to really align with the new consumer? If our job as marketers is to drive human behavior, are we really driving human behavior, or are we stuck somewhat in some of the legacy marketing practices? My premise is that today there is no captive audience for almost anything, right? The consumer has just completely shut down any type of advertising, right? And there's no longer television, right? Television ads, people are just Netflixing, right? Remember for those of us who are old enough to remember when you first got email, you read every email, right? And now you sort of glance at your email, right? You're like, oh, let me look at which ones are from my boss, and you sort of just scan your email, right? We're learned this week, that people aren't using Google search on their mobile devices anymore. Wow, what does this mean for marketing? Right? And on and on and on. And if the telephone rings, it's like at your home, I assume it's one of two people. It's either my mother or it's a cold caller, right? Because no one's using the phone anymore. So, what does this mean? What does this mean for our practice? And so, you might say to me, well, Tami, there are some great commercials, and they really break through. And so, I kind of use this story as a little bit of a convention to say, sure, if you're Budweiser and you can afford to hire these Clydesdale horses and train a dog and buy the 2-minute spot in the Super Bowl, then you probably don't need to listen to this talk at all, because you should go with that strategy, because that is incredibly powerful. If you have a massive brand behind you and a massive marketing budget, then this is probably a great strategy, and you do have a captive audience. But for the rest of us, I would say for the rest of us, it's all about capturing attention on what I'll call the attention grid. And to illustrate how difficult this is, one day I was coming up the New York City subway, and I'm sure you've all experienced this. I'm coming out of the subway, and people are always trying to hand you pamphlets or sell something to you. No. And this one day, this guy was actually standing there handing out money. He was handing out dollar bills. And I walked by and I did my no. And for a second I paused and I thought, I guess I could have accepted money. But that is how powerful the reflex is that we don't want to be marketed to. We don't want to be sold. And for marketing, for us marketers, that makes our life incredibly difficult because we're just being tuned out, right? When was the last time you clicked on a banner ad, right? When was the last time you weren't irritated when the phone ring at your home during dinner, right? When was the last time you weren't irritated when a mobile text ad popped up? So what does that leave us with, right? And to illustrate this point in a digital way, here's Google, right? And I feel like sad for all these marketers who bought all these paid ads, right, on the right. Oh, so much money going right down the drain because no one's ever seeing it, right? When was the last time you looked at the right of a Google page? You just don't, right? People know to actually seek the organic information. And more they seek to find the organic information from people, right, not from brands. And so my premise I'm going to talk a little bit about today is that social advocacy is really, will give you that authentic reach. And it's one of the last channels, and I think one of the most underutilized channels to actually break through and reach people. So think for a minute, just take a minute and think through, what was the last product you learned about or company you learned about? Just think for a minute. New product, you heard about it. This is a little dangerous, but I'll take a test. Do you have a product, Sarah, by chance, that you can think of? Maybe someone over here? Here you go. Okay, and where did you learn about it? Reading the Sunday paper on an ad. Okay, this is why this is dangerous. Anyone else?
Like GoToMeeting software, and when I learned about it was on Facebook. I learned about it on Facebook after I went to a GoToMeeting meeting.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And my premise here is that most often, it tends to be today either word of mouth or social media, or social media driven through word of mouth, right? And less so from an ad or a television commercial or the newspaper. So think a little bit, this really changes the whole dynamics of branding, right? The way we used to brand, and I remember this, right? You really thought about your brand as, this perfect image, perfectly architected and on message, right? And I remember talking about, are we on message? Are we on brand, right? You had the brand police, and everybody was worried that it was perfect, right? So 3 levels of legal and brand approval, right? Today, I would argue that branding is much more amorphous, right? It's much more about a collection of your employees and your customers and what people are saying about your brand in social media. Almost the collective feeling across a group of people, across maybe the United States, the world, your constituency, who you're targeting, about the impression of your brand. And that, as brand marketers, you need to be, I think, a little less controlling and a little more willing to let people sort of evolve, because most likely you're going to hear about a new brand from a person as opposed to from the actual brand itself, from that beautiful advertising message. The good news is it turns out that this bag of marbles actually has 300% more surface area, right? So particularly for brands who don't have large budgets, right? This is wonderful because I think it gives us, much more surface area, much more ability to penetrate some of these audiences around our brand. So this is a little bit of example, that I use that I think is kind of funny to say. If I ask this gentleman here to stand up and say how great he is, right?
Oh, it's easy.
Can you do that? Would you mind?
I'm great. I have no trouble with that.
That was good. That was good. How do we feel about him? We don't feel great, right? We sort of feel like he's a little braggy. He's, we don't love him. But
Ask Noreen, she's my boss.
oh, okay.
How really great I am.
And what is your name, sir?
Dominic.
Dominic. But if I tell you that Dominic is the salt of the earth, he is the smartest man and the best business person that you have ever met, and you have to meet Dominic, for whatever reason, you don't necessarily know me, but you believe me, right? Well, Dominic must be a great guy because Tami says he's a great guy, right? And it really does work like this, right? If you can get that third-party validation. And social and that third-party validation is really, really becoming a huge driver of, I'll say, brand development and organic reach, and really authentically meeting prospects and customers. And so here's an example of, if you've noticed, a lot of times now, and Twitter is now the algorithm for Google, right? A lot of times now, if you search on something, you'll notice people's Twitter feeds or personal interactions are coming up. I noticed this actually right around Halloween. It's still pretty close to Halloween season. I was trying to find costumes. And I was actually trying to find a store near me that I could buy a costume, but what was coming up was people's Pinterest pages, right? And I thought, wow, I'm amazed that the sort of the stores, the brands, weren't able to get their, to get their stores into my newsfeed. They were actually people who are much more powerful, because I think the dynamic that's happening there is people really want to see what other people are wearing, not necessarily what stores are selling, right? People want to hear what other people think about your brand, your restaurant, your store, your product, as opposed to what the brand is saying, because it's authentic. And so I'm going to talk now about, if you believe me on this premise, I'm going to talk now a little bit about some ways that you can put effect to build authentic reach. I still often feel that marketing organizations sometimes are sort of giving maybe social media and influence marketing and reaching humans as opposed to more traditional brand campaigns, potentially an unfair share of the marketing budget. So the first one, and this might be an obvious one, but building employee advocacy. So back when I was at IBM, I had every person on my team was writing a blog, tweeting, sharing, and we built, deep influencer programs. And of course, with 400,000 people, you can imagine the scale of this, right? And so I'm a real believer that your employee base should be sharing your brand. They should be, build part of their job role. Every person in your organization should be to build brand advocacy. Recently, I was at a trade show, and we were on the floor with eBay Enterprise. And I was on the floor, and I was talking to this guy who was so smart about e-commerce and omnichannel. I was just completely blown away by the expertise of this person. And I said to him, hey, do you blog? Are you out there on social? And he said, well, no, I'm not really an executive. And I thought, that's crazy, right? That kind of thinking is a little bit old school. So let's get you out there. Let's build your presence so you can share your knowledge, not just at a trade show, right? You can share your knowledge much more broad than that and build your influence. Tribe up. So I often in my marketing really look. So if I'm targeting retail, who are the people in Chicago, right, that care about retail or that are influential in retail, that people listen to in retail, right? Or at a regional level or at a vertical level, right? If you're targeting people who, I don't know, are influential in the fashion industry, who are those people and how can you connect with them? And there are a bunch of different ways to do this, right? You see a lot of brands doing in B2B space, you'll see a lot of brands doing the top 25 influencers for computing, right? And they drive, and then, I see myself on the list, and so then I'm going to share the list, right? And it becomes this whole human to human, right? Which can be really, really powerful. The movie industry does a really good job of this. They find these kind of movie freaks, right? And they incent them in small ways to really promote a movie. Curate others' content. This content marketing play, I think, is a really, really important one, because again, it helps to build authority in an authentic way that's not salesy. So this is a picture of Michael Brenner, and Michael actually syndicates my blog, which is really nice. But I noticed he syndicates, I was so honored until I realized he syndicates lots of blogs, and I thought, wow, that is really, really smart, because Michael is saving himself having to write a blog a day, sharing other people's content and building his authority. As brands, we can do the same thing, right? I'm about to launch a microsite, omnichannelretail.com. I'm working actively with influencers, with people who create content that'll let me syndicate that content to really build that content. Because as brands, it's so difficult to really drive that content and build that authority in an authentic way. So one way to do that is actually to kind of source that content and drive your authority in that way. Find people who already love you. So, this is kind of an example of people just absolutely loving a brand and really wanting to write about it. So, are there ways that you can, kind of help to incent people in a fun way to engage in your brand? So we do this, a couple of examples. We do this with tech. We'll ask college students to participate in meetups or to participate in social media activities. And college students are great, right? Because they'll do this at a very simple price. If anybody gets the Skim, does anyone get the Skim? It's a little newsletter that comes out. It's one of my favorites. It's kind of a quick read in the morning. And the Skim does this. They say, listen, if you share our Skim newsletter, we'll make you a Skim ambassador. We'll send you a Skim coffee cup. Well, it seems like a little teeny thing, but people really love the Skim. The Skim newsletter. It's really fun. It's clever. It's well done. And they kind of want to be a part of the brand. So giving people a way to participate in building your brand can be a really powerful way. And really, there are those people who really rise to the top. That they're your, in the movie industry, they call them nodes, right? That they're your nodes, or they're really your brand advocates. That they're actually willing to go out there and really share how much they love your brand. And so just giving that a little love and thinking through how you can build and expand on those types of people and relationships. Another one here is go local. Number 5 is go local. So, local communities can be very, very powerful because people enjoy networking within their local community. So, we do a lot of meetups in tech, and there's lots of different types of meetups on almost any topic that you can imagine. And at first I sort of wondered, well, does this really scale? In both of my jobs, we're trying to cover, my most recent jobs, we're trying to cover the world. It's like, God, a meetup, how many meetups do you have to do? But the reality is, I think this is the way the world is today, right? Because we've lost the platform to do, national or global advertising reach, right? That would be nice, that would be easy if you had the budget. But this is harder, but it can be very, very powerful. And even again, kind of tying getting your employees out there to some of these meetups. I observe sometimes that some of the startups are really good at this. They're really good at driving little communities around, in key communities like in New York City, in Chicago, and San Francisco, and saying, we're going to drive some meetups, and we're going to really start to get a buzz going. Because the reality is, if you get a buzz going in some of these key cities, it'll start to spread and expand and build that evangelism. Hiring bloggers or working out of with an affiliate network. Bloggers, can be really, really powerful and kind of a new PR, if you will, and getting some of those blogs placed. So now, you obviously have your traditional press engine, but then there's also this engine where it's all around native advertising. And I think native advertising is a great way to kind of introduce your brand and bring people into your brand dialogue. And then also affiliate network is another opportunity where you can place your brand, on thousands of sites, right, versus just your home base. Because again, another behavior that's kind of go away is people coming to your homepage, right? They're just not there. Personalized engage. This is an interesting one. This Church's Chicken ran a Facebook dark campaign. So Facebook dark posts, right, are paid Facebook posts that you see. If you're a Facebooker, you'll see them come in from different brands. And what they did was a little bit clever. They positioned their brand to different constituencies based on the different buys. So they did a buy for some of their older, more loyal customers, this person here on the left, that would really appeal to their older, more loyal customers. But then they targeted millennials with this kind of dab biscuit and sip, peel, repeat, which was targeted to a younger millennial base. And what's nice about that, right? In the old days, it would have been really expensive to do 2 commercials, right, for 2 different audiences. And go with Facebook or some of these social platforms, you can actually very easily do a very specific target with very, very different messaging. Again, you kind of go to the bag of marbles, right? Like completely different message and brand in front of 2 completely different customer sets. Interesting example. Add value to build community. So, can you think of ways to sort of celebrate your customers, to make them feel a part of your brand? So this is an example that we did for Stop and Shop, which was kind of nominate your mom and here's something special for your mom, and ask her, it was very specific, tell us what your mom's favorite food is, and we'll send her a recipe for that food with a Valentine's Day message. And there are lots of different ways you can do this. I send Valentine's to customers actually on Valentine's Day, or send them special appreciation, but are there ways that you can actually engage with customers to thank you? I'll never forget, I was tweeting at NRF one year, Warby Parker, their CEO was speaking, one of my favorite brands, and their branded property tweeted to me, "Hey Tami, thanks for being here and supporting our brand. We really appreciate it." It's really nice, and I'll never forget that. Maybe that's a silly thing, but it actually made an impression on me. I think these things do make an impression, even for brands that have need scale and reach. Context is everything. So, you see this here, Watch Me Mayday. They're jumping into some of the trends. And the old way used to be on message, right? Consistent. But today, with just the influx of content, you really need to be relevant and contextually relevant. And think through, what's happening in the world, what's happening in your brand that might be interesting to your consumers, or tie into an interesting moment. And this gets a little bit into newsjacking, but keeping things relevant. Even so, for retail, an example would be, it's holiday shopping season. Are you in that conversation? Have you found a creative way to drive your brand into the conversation that's happening? Because if the conversation is happening here with the consumer, and you're over here with your brand message, you're just going to be a miss. It's much more likely to get, really to get interest if you're able to actually jump in. Community is a really great opportunity. Really trying to build community within your constituents. So I just started a retail innovation dinner series here in Chicago, one in San Francisco, and in LA. We just invited executives in e-commerce to really meet and network. And these kind of things can be very powerful. These types of communities are popping all over, whether it's a LinkedIn community that you activate, or a Facebook community, or a tribe on Triber, which is a kind of a blogging platform. This whole area around, communities of people coming together, and as a brand, you kind of helping to drive that, drive that community interaction, can really be a very powerful way to drive that brand awareness and bring people in and align them with your brand. So those are 10 ways that I think you can really activate this human to human or word of mouth as a part of your marketing. And I think that my thought is if you took all those ads on the right hand side of Google that no one's really watching, you can really push that and fuel that into how can we really activate people and really drive word of mouth marketing. I think many of us would shift our marketing dollars and how we spend it.
Tami, do you have some time for some questions?
Sure.
Good morning, Tami. So one of the questions was, I saw that you've spoken a lot about employee advocacy. So are you using any sort of tools for that, employee advocacy tools?
So the question is, are you using any specific tools for employee advocacy?
Yeah, try to complete that. We are.
Or maybe we can kind of restate, how are you encouraging employee advocacy?
So they're VoiceStorm. Thank you. So VoiceStorm is a platform that can actually help your employees to make it a little bit simpler to populate content that will help them to sort of get a regular drumbeat going. One of the things that can be difficult about getting employee advocates on is that, people are busy, right? And it's just adding another layer to their day job. So tools like VoiceStorm can actually help by pulling in and aggregating content that would be relevant or would make sense for you to share, and it just takes sort of some of the guesswork out of it. One of the reasons I've had employees tell me that they don't engage in social media is that you think it was that when they didn't have the time, they were busy, but they're actually worried about, what if I tweet something, somebody actually said to me, what if I tweet something that's going to get me fired? And, I hadn't really thought of it, to be honest with you, but I think that's a real concern. So using a tool that sort of helps to aggregate from like this whole pool of content can be really great at helping getting employees activated. And then the other thing is, I think, celebrating employees, because people are also worried it's going to be seen as frivolous, like, oh, there's Tami again out on Twitter, and if your executive management team really supports and embraces, I think.
So you gave a lot of great examples of, things that you to your senior executives and get the buy-in to budget for this stuff.
Yeah, well, I tell you, one of the little tricks about that's not competitive, but that makes sense, pretty inexpensive, right? So you kind of do a little bit of a sharing and say, okay, graded it, reasonable budget, you can go it on your own. That we're on. We invited 20 people to dinner. Out of it came 2 meals, right? I mean, really doing your,
Any other questions? Come on, folks, I know you have one. I'll come over there. We have to keep talking or Tammy's going to freeze up there. So let's...
That's why I moved back and forth.
Very great presentation. This is that as companies are starting to become more relevant and pay attention to, you can kind of tip some tips in how do you keep a balance between
Microsoft the press website. The press is a website about, and tips on keeping your leadership, which I see those moving down that path.
How many of these you have implemented in eBay rate?
That I work in, we definitely are, we're doing this omni-channel retail.com saying, hey, I see you right, we'd love to align, kind of put as a stated goal.
Strategy, our wonderful inaugural summit at a competing hotel. Walsh is
competing hotel. We're slightly lens, and I want to talk to you about communicating at the senior funding. In our enterprise, and to attention and to our customers. I think that message has been hammered home. It's not setting foundations that are going to let us do great things, and it may take us a little time to do that. To and technology. And it's a complicated conversation. There are decisions that have to be made. There's priority. So diving in and moving straight to what the experience will look like, launch it on, don't do, then sustaining the experience development is going to be that much harder. So, it's like, no, my slide. We're at this interesting juxtaposition, right? You have digital natives, those companies that, let's say, 15-ish years ago, and Airbnb, they've got a portion of what their industry does. In an Airbnb comparison, Hilton Worldwide, we go from you're thinking about your trip to you're checking out a restaurant, right? But they've built their platform to do that. Whole number less than 10. Definition, right? Change, but it took, and like a lot, to we have to work structure processes, customer bases that predate the digital age of the digital experience. So we have to take all that we've learned and all the beauty of our culture and our history and our rituals, and we have to figure out, the same way my grandparents did when they all immigrated from Ireland, how you maintain your culture, but you do things in a new and different way. And that's part of the excitement of this space, even in the, and especially for the immigrant community. And I would say if you are in an immigrant company, part of what you have to do is educate your executives that that's where you are. It's going to impact what you can do first. Not what you can do ever, but what you can do first, and how long it might take to get to what you can do second. So understanding your company's placement in the continuum is really important. So in order to have these conversations and to build this buy-in, there are three things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about strategy, criticality of agreement and alignment among your executives, and then there are a few, what I think are core enablers to any sustainable digital practice, and we'll spend a couple minutes there. So we're going to start where we should start, right, with strategy. This actually isn't true. You don't need one. You need more than one. We all have more than one, right? Everybody's got a strategy for everything. But digital is a convergence, right? It's not just about a single point or a single channel. Digital actually touches many different areas. It touches customer care, it touches the web channel, it touches the mobile channel, it touches in your rooms and on hotels, the TV. It's a digital channel for us. So digital is actually quite broad. And you're going to need multiple strategies that converge to tell a single story. And I think these are the critical 5 for everybody. Different industries, you'll have different additional strategies. This list and the advocates for these strategies in your executive suite are the people you'll be meeting and talking on a regular basis. So from a digital practice perspective, I want my business owner, my executive sponsor, to really be driving conversation and telling us where we're going. Everything needs to ladder up to the overarching business strategy. If you don't have one, I don't know why you're working, right? Because we have to be working towards something, and creating a digital experience that doesn't meet goals for the company isn't really helpful. Customer strategy. We talked a little bit about it this morning on the panel, right? And we weren't talking about it in these terms, but who's your customer advocate? Who's telling you, what customers you have, what you need, what data you have, what's accessible? How do you retain them? How do you acquire them? How do you measure them? How do you reward them? How do you answer their questions and solve their problems? The customer advocate in the customer-centric enterprise and the digital experience landscape, the customer strategy, the customer advocate is, I think, a piece most of us are missing. And everyone's like, it can't be one person. I don't believe that. I think you can have a customer advocate. Doesn't mean everyone else isn't doing it, but But somebody needs to own that conversation. Technology strategy. IT is, I think, one of the most people at this table, right? You cannot leave them out. They can't be an add-on. They can't be able to talk to them later. They can't be they just make things so difficult. IT has to be a decision maker in this, and they need a strategy. And I'm not talking about which technologies they're choosing and using, right? It is, are we open source or proprietary? Do we have an API platform? Do we need an API platform? How are we choosing technologies? What's our methodology? Are we all in or are we best in breed? That's coming from your IT group. And that strategy needs to respond to what the business needs to do and what we need to do to support customers. So they have to be interlinked, because if everybody's going off and creating their own, you've just got chaos. So content strategy is in my title, so I'm especially passionate about this one. And I think Bertrand did a great job talking about this yesterday around digital assets. But digital experience is based on content. Somebody will be interacting with words and pictures. That is what digital experience ends up being, right? So what's your strategy? How are you structuring it? Where are you storing it? Who's writing it? What's your governance around what happens where? What channels are you distributing to? What languages are you putting content in? Are you translating? Are you localizing? Big decisions that have a lot of impact on what you're going to be able to deliver at the end of the day. And then your product strategy is what you're actually building, right? Think about digital as a product. It's not a one and done. You're going to be iterating and building over time. These 5 advocates at the executive level need to be speaking regularly and candidly about what's happening in their organizations, what decisions are needing to be made, what impacts of decisions are. It is, I think, a regular conversation, because if it's not regular, then people are surprised and the work you're doing slows down. So I love this quote from Dan Sheldon. This is an excellent blog post. I will tweet out the link to it if somebody doesn't do it before I finish speaking. It was posted just a couple months ago. The goal of digital is to make things better, not to replicate what we do in another way. It is to make the lives of our customers better. And so if the work we're doing doesn't ladder up to an overarching strategy, and we can't articulate how it's making the world of our customers better, like mobile check-in, for instance, from the hotel industry, it was a big conversation, right? We are built on face-to-face service. It is about making you feel wanted and welcome and safe and that you have everything you need. How can we do that if we're not actually speaking to you, right? So how we deliver and maintain that relationship with you when you're checking in through your phone and over time, and this is already a market for Hilton and others are bringing it on board, using your phone as your key so you don't actually have to stop and talk to anybody. How do we maintain a relationship with you? How do we make you feel like we know you and we want you and we're happy you are here and we are here to make your travel experience that much better? So we have to factor all of that in, and your executive level support in communicating that and establishing those goals is really important. So this is going to bring me to, in my very unscientific survey of one, that being me, I think that agreement and alignment is the point at which we go off the rails more often than funding, scope, and timing. These are very powerful words. I think they mean different things. It is especially important at the executive level because, let's be honest, we need them to get sustained funding for us. So if they're not all on the same page, we've got some trouble. So the difference to me is agreement is a decision, is a moment, is a checkbox. We are saying that we are doing X. It is documentable and it is documented. And then it is provided with context to all the people who agreed, and it is stored so you can reference it later when somebody says they didn't agree to it. Or when you need to change and rediscuss the decision because something in the market changed or in the company changed. So agreement is going to be a whole list of things over the life cycle of your work that you have to come back to. Alignment is a lot harder, and it's exhausting because it is a constant process to keep everybody on the same path. Talk about each just a little bit more detail. So agreement is the what. It means that your executive leadership, even your project team, this carries all the way through the work, right? But you're saying, we agree that X, mobile key, new CMS, that we are online chat, whatever it is, whatever the experience you're adding to improve your customer's world, what's the destination? It's where you're going. It's the end point. And everybody's got to say, yep, no matter what it means to me, I believe that's the right thing for our customer and for our company. Because we are here to make money, right? So we need to make sure that what we're doing is in the best interest of the company as well. But you have to have agreement. Document it, store it, provide it with context so you can refer back to it. Because they can change, and sometimes they will, and we shouldn't be afraid of that, but we need to document why it changed. Alignment is the how. So if agreement is what we're doing, alignment's the map to get us there. And maps are not perfect, and not everything is clear. And this is where I think we go off paths. So an example from a previous life, we were dealing with a content author community issue. I ran a content operations team, and I was being told by particular stakeholders who had time-sensitive content they needed published that my team was a roadblock because it had to be put in a queue, and there were SLAs, and blah, blah, blah. So we started to talk about the problem, which was we needed a more user-friendly content author experience. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's figure out how we do that. And we immediately went to technology. The CMS is the problem, it's not user-friendly. So we've been talking about this for months, and I was talking with the lead stakeholder on it, and I felt like we were kind of at cross purposes. And I said, I don't know that we're on the same page about this. I said, I'm talking about adding capabilities so that your team can make content changes as needed. And because I'm doing that, I'm expecting that you're staffing to actually make those content changes. And you're accepting responsibility for that process. I said, no, that's not what I want. He said, I just want to know in a pinch that we can if we have to. Otherwise, I'm happy for your team to continue making changes. So we were talking about it as a technology problem. It was actually a people and process problem. And if we had kept on going, neither of us would have been happy with where we ended up because it wasn't where we agreed. We were able to actually right that ship and shift the conversation so that we were able to respond more quickly to the changes they needed to make. They didn't actually need access to the system. They didn't really want it. They just thought they did. So and the only reason we discovered that was because he and I talked on a regular basis and we hammered out what impacts of decisions were. And this is necessary at the executive level too. Digital check-in for hotels, the team at the hotel has to accept responsibility for answering new questions, solving new problems, handling issues that they weren't actually involved in the first place, but they're getting you when you're unhappy. It's, hotel operations run really smoothly and they're very complicated. Adding in new responsibility and shifting responsibility takes agreement and alignment from the operations team to say, yeah, we're willing to take that on. Because if they weren't, mobile check-in couldn't happen. It wouldn't matter how good an interface we built, it couldn't happen because nobody would actually know that you had checked in. Because if they're not willing to actually process it and handle it, we're at a loss. So that's why alignment has to be constantly curated. You're constantly talking to the execs and letting them in on where their team is going to be impacted. And they need to let you know what they're working on and how it might impact the experience you're building. So assuming you've got the appropriate strategies and stakeholders at the table, assuming that you have agreement on where you're going and alignment on how you're going, there are some key pieces that I think everybody needs in place. They have been all mentioned over the past day and a half, so none of them should be a surprise. But I'm suggesting it at the executive level because they all require major investment of both money and time and priority in terms of making them part of the enterprise, not just part of digital. And that they are enablers for everything you want to accomplish. So the three pieces are taxonomy, data, and APIs. So taxonomy is a controlled vocabulary, right? And when we talk about consistent digital experiences, we need to make sure that we have smart content to drive them. And the way we get smart content is we tag it and we make it smart. So we need a consistent, organized data structure that we can apply to content, digital assets, to, in our case, property data and rates, so that we can dynamically aggregate and build experiences in very different ways on very different channels for whatever it is we need in the moment. So to me, the taxonomy, which is often done in, I've seen, System 1 has their taxonomy, System 2 has their taxonomy, System 3 has theirs, and there's no thesaurus to tell you how they all map together. This is an enterprise need. I encourage you to advocate for it because over time it will make building and deploying and sustaining your digital experiences significantly easier. Data. I don't know that we need to talk much about this one. I know we've talked about it quite a bit. This is not just data that you need in order to drive the experience, which is part of it, but data that you want to capture and feed back. Where is it going? Where is it going to be stored? What does the customer profile look like? Remember we talked about the customer strategy? What is your customer profile? What are the attributes you're capturing? How are you supplementing that with third party? What's accessible for use where? The data piece is really important. And talked this morning about, I think everybody needs an enterprise data strategy, which tells where things are going to live and how they're going to be accessed and how you're going to aggregate, because data is driving every decision. It's driving customer care, it's driving online digital customer experiences, it's driving technology decisions. We need to be smart about that. And the last one is APIs, and I've been at my previous life, I was a champion for this there, and I'm a champion for it at Hilton as well. APIs are, quite honestly, are one of the differences between digital immigrants and digital natives. A lot of the natives already have them. We immigrants need to build them. They are a understood, shared language that allow us to pull stuff up from all those legacy systems and do it in a way that developers understand, which allows us to develop easier and faster and in a repeatable way. And it sounds like it's a technology problem or a technology task because it's content and data and code, but it's actually a business opportunity. APIs open all sorts of new business models for us. There's opportunity for monetization of your content if you're using APIs. And because they're developer friendly and you do them as customer focused, I'm not going to build an API against my reservation system. I'm going to build an API about how to make a reservation, how to get property information, how to cancel a reservation, how to modify. I'm going to do it in a way that is meaningful to the customers that I want to drive experience to. So it may sound like a purely technical play, but it's actually a really critical element of business strategy. And it's one I hope a lot of you are either working on already or are willing to take and advocate for. Because this one takes time and it's expensive to get started. But over time, your cost savings and your speed to market blow you out of the water. It's going to be, it is so meaningful to what we all want to accomplish. So I'm going to leave it as my three pieces. No business strategy, no work. Start there. Manage to alignment, because that's where you're going to wander. People are going to wander off the path and they'll take detours. You need to bring them back. Make sure everybody's going in the same direction and you're all expecting the same things and you all understand the impacts. And then work on those core enablers. They are really critical. And you're going to be in different places with each of them, but I promise those three are going to make a huge difference in how your enterprise functions and how you're able to deliver digital experiences.
Megan, thank you so much. Questions? Who has a question for Megan?
Thank you, Noreen. Megan, following up on just exactly what you said about the APIs a moment ago, especially in the hospitality industry, as you probably know better than anyone, the different players in the industry have had to come together in order to determine standards for how APIs are built so that other applications can be built around the art of making a reservation, canceling a reservation. The APIs essentially are the verbs that you give to other software developers to build capabilities around what you do. But it takes that kind of standardization, which requires cooperation among many people in the industry. It's wonderful that the folks in the hospitality industry have been able to do that. How would you incentivize people in other industries, like telecommunications, to come together to build APIs around what they do so that it makes it easier for others to build applications and to leverage the functionality that you're trying to give them?
So I'm not sure that industries need to come together.
Really?
I think some of the power of APIs, and when they're done well, right, is they're meant to be developer friendly, right? So their customer is the developer, and you can use more natural language in how you're establishing the APIs and the documentation on how to use the APIs. So, yes, there is the standard for elements and codes around hospitality, as long as we can map to them, because they're not necessarily meaningful to people outside of the industry. And we may want partners who aren't in hospitality to be using our APIs. So we don't want to close off use. So it's a balance, and it's why I'm not fully convinced that there has to be an industry standard so much as there needs to be clear documentation, and you need to use common language in your verbs and your activities, customer-focused language, as opposed to industry or even corporation. Hilton Ease isn't going to help anyone build against our APIs if they're building Hilton Ease, right? So, I think that's more important than necessarily the industry standard.
Megan, thank you very much. I wanted to mention that Megan is a member of the CMSWire Reader Advisory Panel, which we just started a few months ago, one of Dawn's initiatives. So anyone who might be interested in that, give Dawn a shout, or send him an email, or tweet him, or send him a selfie, or he likes dogs, whatever you want to do. We'd be happy to have you. We're going to rotate the panel out. It's kind of a way for our readers to tell us what they think, what they would like us to cover, how we can make the publication better and build the community. So with that, our next speaker, you may have encountered him on Monday at one of the workshops. Seth Earley is CEO of Earley Information Services, and he was here on Monday giving a workshop about the importance of having a roadmap for your digital transformation. Today he's going to talk about a case study and give us some more insight on MarTech, and we're very happy to have Seth with us today. And by the way, it's Earley, E-A-R-L-E-Y.
And information science.
Science.
Not services.
Information science.
Right. Okay. I get it wrong too.
Oh, Seth, you're killing me here with the Early and the science.
Spell it right.
Wait, in any event, let's say hi to
I'm
Seth.
here. The coveted pre-lunch slot, where the only thing standing between you and food is me. So I'll try to get right to it. I actually am happy to be back today. I did have to leave. I couldn't be here yesterday. After my workshop, I had to fly back to Newark and meet a customer for a very, very important meeting. Tuesday morning. And so when I got there, planes, trains, automobiles, got in late, got up early, got to the meeting, and everybody decided to dial in. Except for one person. One person was there. Anyway, but I got to catch up with my team, and I got to catch up with the clients, so it was all good. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the journey, the customer journey, and how to really start putting technology in the right context. And this is a little bit of my background. I won't go into boring details, but I've been doing this for a very long time. I've taught graduate school and co-authored a book on knowledge management, and I actually used to look like that. And the reason I used to look like that is my wife has always told me that I look older with the beard. And has anybody tried out that machine learning algorithm, howold.net? Has anybody seen that? It's Microsoft's machine learning. So this is the lesson in machine learning. So this is the value of machine learning. So I put my picture in to the howold.net, and guess my age, exactly right, 56. That's pretty good, but my wife always tells me that I look older with the beard. So I thought, let me take the beard off and see what howold.net says. This is machine learning. So the value of machine learning to me is proving my wife wrong. But that won't last. All right, so let's jump in. So I want to talk a little bit about the landscape of this organization, this particular customer, who they were, their maturity, and I'm going to talk about ways of simplifying the process, because everyone is facing this challenge of being able to select technologies and put those technologies to work. And there's just a couple of different ways of thinking about this. So for this particular organization, it was a global manufacturer of vehicles. They sold through dealers, so they didn't really do a lot directly with customers. They had very limited e-commerce capabilities. Mostly sold a lot of parts online. You could do some configuration of vehicles, but they really didn't have that much. And the IT organization wanted to consolidate their system. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to add some new capabilities, but they really wanted to consolidate what they had. Business had a very specific goal. They wanted to sell more stuff. They wanted to increase their sales. But they did not have any visibility to customer data because they went through dealers. So it was very challenging for them to think about the customer lifecycle. And of course, the sales information was really consolidated. So again, they did not have the ability to get that visibility. And the project that I was on was really to create this roadmap to help them understand their maturity, to put a plan in place, and to put a roadmap going forward. So here's a little bit more about this situation itself. Marketing operations heavily reliant on agencies. I'm sure a lot of organizations are still doing this. Problem with agencies, of course, is you have you have many parts of your process that you can't integrate as well as you should. They had a global reach, and that meant they had a lot of regional marketing. So lots of agencies, lots of regional marketing. They had a lot of campaigns that were localized to engage with their community because they had a very dedicated rider community. They did have maturity. They did have pockets of excellence, right? They weren't all bad. They were doing some things very well, but there were disconnects in their processes that were not visible to leadership. I found this out because I wanted to buy one of these vehicles, and I actually applied 3 times to say, come, call on me, tell me about this, sell me a vehicle, and nobody ever called me. But prior to that, they were saying, oh yeah, we capture leads. Oh, none fall through the cracks. Sure, I have data that says that's not the case, but it wasn't visible. And then you have this huge complexity of the marketing technology landscape. Everybody is seeing the crazy infographics. Everybody is seeing that there's thousands of vendors. And so the IT organization was frozen. They really didn't know what to do about this. And the business was just, how big a check do I have to write? Period, end of story. Didn't want to hear about the details. Didn't want to think about this from a nuanced perspective. And it's very difficult to solve those problems just by writing a check. This is what their world looked like. I've redacted a bit, but anything wrong with this picture? Not enough dam. Yeah, more dam. Need more dam. Need more dam. Yeah. More cowbell. More cowbell. All right, so the point here is it's very disconnected. You have all of these sprawling digital asset management systems. By the way, you have product data and taxonomies all over the place. By the way, Meghan, I love you. You spoke about taxonomies. I am married, but you know, it's that professional platonic sort of love, but I still love you. That's so important to have consistency. They had no consistency in this situation when they had product data, another product, Excel spreadsheets, by the way. That was their product information management system, Excel, all over the place. So they had many, many different systems, lots of digital asset management systems. They had agencies. And again, how do you consolidate this? How do you start to move this forward? It's a very, very difficult situation. It's very hard to write a check to solve that problem. How big a check do you write? So the first thing to do is to say, all right, where are your challenges? And a roadmap is great, but a roadmap only tells you where you're going. What does a maturity model do? A maturity model basically tells you, okay, and how far you have to go. And again, there are pockets of maturity. This is probably a little bit generous in terms of what they're doing. But we also need to say, first of all, when you start trying to build more maturity in the organization, you don't necessarily jump from one stage to 2 or 3 stages up. It usually takes an organization about a year to go from one maturity stage to another. How many people here have used maturity models in some of their work? Yeah, there's a lot of different maturity models. But again, you're looking at the organization in multiple dimensions, and you're trying to identify where you need to remediate. And this particular model was really based more on the technical foundational capabilities. Product information management, digital asset management, product and site search, user experience, taxonomy and navigation, digital business excellence. This is a bit of an ambiguous phrase, but it kind of cuts across a couple of different areas, and governance. And what this is saying is that there are certain pieces that you absolutely have to have in place before you can do other stuff. And then the other thing you want to do is say, all right, after a project, projects do not solve all your problems. Projects will move you a little bit along the learning curve. So the idea here is to say, what does my capability require? If I am trying to build a multi-channel marketing environment where I have the ability to have consistency across channels and devices and consistent messaging, and I want to let customers do certain things, what do I have to have in place? What do I need? I can't do it if I don't have product information management or customer information. I can't do it if I don't have consistent terminology and metadata. So this is the cost of admission. This is the stuff that you have to do before you can do other things. So again, what we're trying to say is, what do I require for a particular process, and then where am I going to be after a particular project? Now, if you are at maturity stage 1, and your process and your capabilities require you to be at stage 4, and the executive in charge says, yeah, 3 months and $50,000, you're not going to get there, right? So what this does is it gives you a little bit of a sanity check to say, where are we? Where do we need to be? What's our level of maturity? And this will go into a roadmap. Now that was one way of looking at this. You can also look at maturity from the customer lifecycle perspective. And I'm going to talk about customer lifecycles in a minute, but every organization, every industry has different phases where you think about the types of ways that you're engaging with a customer. How many people here have mapped their customer lifecycle, their customer journey, their organization? So a number of you. It's very important to do this because when we were first brought on, they said, you know what? We just want to do an e-commerce system. We want e-commerce. And it's like, no. Take a step back. You really want to think not just about e-commerce. If you are only focusing on e-commerce, you are only focusing on one aspect, you're only focusing on purchase, but you're not talking about all the other things that you can do with an integrated digital marketing and digital commerce capability. So focusing just on commerce is not the way to think about this. You have to think about the entire customer lifecycle. So again, this is just another way of looking at this. You can look at this from a maturity model from a technical perspective. You can look at maturity models from a customer journey perspective. And you can bring these together. I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, again, everybody looks at the super graphics. What's the value of those super graphics? Confusion. What's that? for the Consultant Employment Act, is that what it is? I mean, it doesn't really help you because all it does is say, oh, this is overwhelming, this is difficult, this is hard. And again, we all know it's a very busy ecosystem, it's a changing marketplace, it's challenging. So the question becomes, how do you make sense of this stuff? And I think there's some ways to do this. First, it's understanding the life cycle because different tools will be used at different stages of that customer life cycle, right? That's what those are for. We also have to understand how are we engaging with a customer at a particular stage of their journey. Are we mostly working through dealers and we have to do demand gen in a different way? Are we building community and we're engaging in social media? Are we heavily reliant on traditional marketing? Are we heavily reliant on search, on organic search? And again, each of those engagement strategies will give you different requirements for the capabilities that you need to build. We also need to say, well, what do we have? What do we have in place? What's our current state look like? Do we have 10 different digital asset management systems? Then we have to consolidate that. What are we using to support each stage of that customer journey? Excuse me. And then we have to say, where do we need to be? Based on my competition, based on the needs of the marketplace, based on the expectations of customers, based on where we want to go, based on how we want to compete and differentiate, we need to define the North Star. We need to define that objective. What is our future state? Sometimes you look to other industries. Business-to-business organizations are looking at the business-to-consumer market. Why? Because people they may be in a business context, but they're consumers, and you're used to going to Amazon and getting what you want. So the expectations are being raised by that digital experience in the business-to-consumer market. So again, you have to say, where do we really need to be? And how are we going to engage with our customers? Now, we say, well, how do we align our processes? How do we make sure that we have the right internal processes and that those internal processes are going to support the technology? Because writing a check and buying a tool is not going to get you there, right? You cannot do it that way. And then finally, you can develop your implementation roadmap because you can start to say, where do I need to remediate? Where do I need to focus on foundational capabilities? And so on. So when you start looking at this, again, we talked about the customer life cycle, but this is the customer life cycle. Everyone has to do this. You have to learn about products. You have to choose them. You have to make the selection. You have to purchase them. Are you working through salespeople? Are you working through purely e-commerce? Are you working through a brick and mortar channel? What's your purchase mechanism? They have to get the product. Well, maybe they're getting it through, UPS is shipping it, or maybe they're picking it up in a showroom, or maybe they're consuming it online. They have to use it in some way. Again, sometimes these are collapsed together. They need support, typically, and you need some way of engaging so that they can either become an ambassador or refer you to other customers, right? Everyone has this. Everyone has these stages. Now, you might call them something different, right? If you're in the insurance industry, you'll have this type of a life cycle. If you're in telecom, you have the LBDUPS, the Learn, Buy, Get, Use, Pay, Support model. If you're in manufacturing, it might look like this. And then, of course, in financial services, it's going to look very different as well. But it's a life cycle. It's a customer life cycle. And you want to acquire technologies that will build capabilities for each stage of that life cycle dependent upon your engagement strategy. How are you engaging? What do you need to do? What capabilities do you need to have? So, when you start putting this into the information ecosystem of an organization, you see it gets very complex because you have different departments that are typically supporting different aspects of this life cycle. Marketing is typically supporting the learn, sales the buy, distribution the get, and so on. And then what happens is you start getting different tools and technologies. There's never a single tool that will do everything. So you'll have different technologies, again, supporting that life cycle. This can become your map for purchasing or acquiring new capabilities and new marketing technology. I'm just going to flip through a couple of these. And the thing that you start to realize is you have customer experience on one side, you have the internal processes on the other side, and then you start finding that, you know what, in some cases, you have common technologies. You say, I'm going to use this technology across multiple phases of this process. And I'm starting to highlight these. There's CRM across different ways of interacting, web content management, of course, and so on. And what you start to realize is that your systems are going to help you engage, but they're cutting across siloed processes. And what's really, really important is to have that consistency of architecture and terminology. How often do you pick up the phone and try to call customer service and they transfer you to another department, they use another system, and they ask for your information once again, right? That happens all the time because these processes are disconnected and these systems are disconnected. Does it mean you have to integrate everything with everything? No, but you have to have critical touch points for where you do need to have that kind of integration. So again, we've looked at the customer lifecycle, we've looked at the maturity model. Now we're going to start putting them together. So when you look at this 360-degree view of the customer in this consistent environment that the customer wants to have, the customer doesn't care that you have disconnected processes and people and silos and so on. What they want is they want a simple way of interacting. And you have all of these mechanisms, right? We have all of these different ways. We have the customer lifecycle, lots of different type of one-to-one relationship here. We have multiple touch points and multiple technologies that will interact and support that interaction with the customer in all of these phases. But we have different data sources, we have different technologies, and of course we're trying to measure different objectives. We're trying to say, what do I want to accomplish in each of these areas? So, then you get this, right? You get this. You say, well, I want to have this clear view, but this is what I have. What is this? What is this? At its core, what is it? What are we trying to do when we have this? Any kind of graphic or anything like that? What are you trying to do?
Scare people.
Scare people, sure. But you're trying to make sense of it, right? You're trying to say, how do I group these things? What do you do when you have large amounts of information? You group that information. It's a taxonomy, okay? It is a taxonomy. Because all those little bubbles are saying, hey, all of these companies belong in this little block. Oh, because they are all, doing this particular type of function. Now, I don't particularly like this taxonomy, and we do a lot of work with taxonomies, and I have some other examples in this deck. If you guys want to give me a card afterwards, I'll get you the deck. But let's look at it in a much more useful fashion, because again, the reason why we classify things is to make a decision. And by the way, that can be your guiding principle no matter what taxonomy you build. Whenever you're trying to decide between one term and another, or having two terms versus one, you say, what will you do differently? How will you either treat that term differently, that customer differently, or if it's a folder structure, it doesn't matter what it is. You use different terms because you're going to do something differently. So let's do this. Let's come up with another classification structure. This is my classification structure. God bless you, allergic to classification structures. Inbound communications, right? Because that's what we have to do. We have to serve the customer with inbound. We have to do stuff to bring them in. And there's a whole bunch of different classes of tools. There's web content management, search engine optimization, on-site, and so on. We have outbound, right? We're going to be pushing messages out. And you have outbound communications. There's analytic tools that cut across everything. There's marketing, operations, and automation. Again, this is for a particular customer. For them, this classification work, it's a good classification, but your mileage may vary, as they say. And then commerce tools. And so what we're saying here is when we use a classification like this, it's a little bit easier to align that with our customer lifecycle. Let's go back to our customer lifecycle. So what we can start to do is we can say, first of all, at each stage of the lifecycle, how important is this particular tool? And what I want to do, because not everything is of equal importance, right? Some stuff is going to help to engage the customer in a particular way at a particular point in the life cycle. We want to know what's important. What's the most important thing? So here I can say, you know what? For learn, inbound is really important, and choose, inbound is important, and purchase, not so much because I have some other tools for that. But what you want to worry about is what's of lower importance, what's of high importance. So you're simply differentiating at that level. Now, because my classification structure actually had a lot of stuff in inbound, I'm going to break it out. I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, let's go to another level of granularity. Let's now look at that particular area, and these are the tools that I have, right? Because my taxonomy, I said these are my inbound tools. for my taxonomy and for this customer. Now I can say, let's look at the value of each of these tools in the context of that life cycle. Okay, so here we're saying what is important, and that's where our marketing is this high. This is really important at this phase of the life cycle, dependent upon my strategy, dependent upon my engagement approach. Now, there's another layer you can add on to this, because you can start to say, well, what actual tools do I have? Because everybody has more than one. In fact, in every one of these categories, you probably have more than one. In this case, this organization had several in certain categories. I didn't show which ones they were. Oops. I didn't show which one they were, but I have, this represents a particular tool, A, B, C, D, E, F, right? I just, redacted it. And there's something they had for SEO, they had something here, right? So these are the tools that they have, each one of these. Now I can say, what are we doing really well? This comes back to our maturity model. My maturity model says, hey, I'm doing some stuff good. I'm doing some stuff well. And it depends on the capabilities you're trying to build, right? Now, in this case, I just said red, green, and yellow, because I didn't go into 5 stages, but you get the idea. Can we do this? Can we build this capability? Do we have this capability? Do we not have this capability? I can say, well, what am I not doing so well? And again, how well am I leveraging a particular tool at a particular phase of the customer lifecycle? Again, a little bit of an abstraction here for you guys, I know that, but sort of work with me here. Then I say, well, what am I doing badly? Where are my biggest gaps? And the thing I want to look at is, for the areas where that tool is most important, that class of tool is most important for that phase of the life cycle, what am I not doing well? Okay, and this helps you prioritize. So again, and if you look at, so this was just for inbound, right? Now I can do the same thing for outbound. I have even more tools, right? I have 3 campaign management systems. I have different social media systems. And again, what is the importance of that class of tool for that phase of the customer lifecycle? Does that make sense? This means yes. So, now again, I can do the same thing. What am I doing really well? Well, you know what? If it's green and it's high, yeah, awesome, knocking out our park. Good, don't have to worry about that. If it is yellow, there's a lot of yellow there. Maybe I need to optimize that process. Maybe I need to improve it in some way, shape, or form. This is the one I'm most concerned about. What's red? Where am I failing, or where do I have major gaps? So again, what this does for us is it gives us a mechanism by which we can make sense of that marketing landscape. We classify the technologies in a way that is aligned with our strategy. Then we evaluate those technologies in the context of the life cycle. What capability do I need at that particular point in the life cycle? And by the way, this was the workshop we did on Monday, and I think a few folks found it to be valuable. Because you can do this, you can play at home, right? In fact, I have a couple of workshop kits. You want to, like I said, you want to give me a business card, I'll raffle those off. I'm just kidding, anybody can have them. Anyway, but the point is this. This is an exercise you can bring back to your organization, because you can rate yourself. So this is a great way to get everybody in line. Hey, let's talk about our life cycle. Let's talk about our customer life cycle. Let's get everybody in agreement. Right? Now let's bring together the stakeholders who are responsible for those areas. Now let's talk about the tools that we have. Let's talk about our strategy. Let's look at our gaps. Right? And there's a whole bunch of other stuff you can do with this, but again, this gives you an idea of the phase, the stage, the goals, the technologies, and then the example tools that you can use. So I wanted to blast through that and leave a little bit of time. I actually thought I was going to. Pace was okay. Pace was okay. I was trying to go at a rapid clip so I could get through it. But I do want to also point out that Earley Information Science, spelled the E before the Y, does have roundtables and other types of webinars and white papers and so on. By the way, connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I'd be happy to do that, connect with you. But there's a whole bunch of really good topics, and we try to educate the industry, we try to educate folks, and we bring in other speakers. If you want to speak on one of these roundtables, we'd love to have you. So with that, I'm going to take some questions. Do we have questions, or do we have low blood sugar? Or both?
Who has a question? I'll come around. Let's start here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jennifer Kempin. I love your work. I'm just wondering if you've experienced where you've successfully gotten companies engaged in moving in the first couple phases of the life cycle, but then, you know, getting them further on is a little more difficult. You know what I mean? To get them through.
Yeah, that's a great question and great point. Is it Tami? No.
Jennifer.
Sorry. The challenge is always moving people through that process, and here's what's important. Do you need to be more mature, right? That's the real critical issue, right? Because a higher level of maturity is not necessarily more important, or not necessarily something you need to strive for. So if the process and the capability that you require needs you to be farther along, then you can make that case. But if people are saying, you know what, we're doing great, you know, we're engaging with our customers, business is good, you know, we're getting repeat sales, whatever it is, so you have to really look at the capability that you need. And if that capability is missing, then you have the motivation and the driver to go to the next phase. But if not, if you don't need it, then people aren't going to pay attention. But to your point, if they do need it and you can't get there and you're stuck, that's where you have to start to elevate this and do more change management, more education, more training, more working sessions. So there are some methodologies to get there, but yes, it's very difficult. You know, many organizations can get stuck for a variety of reasons. It could be resourcing, it could be governance, it could be core capabilities, it could be technology. So it's a great question, but yes, it does get very difficult.
Thank you. We have another question here.
Hi, a lot of firms are attempting to do some of these things in a more agile way. Just curious kind of the way you're thinking about the flexibility and the nimbleness of an organization as they try to go on this journey.
So yeah, I think that what you're finding is that when there are those challenges that I pointed out before, where there's all those disconnected processes, that's what slows down the agility, right? The whole idea of improving these processes is to increase the agility, to be able to speed up the clock speed increase the clock speed of the organization, so that you can do things more quickly. You can react to customer needs, you can react to competitive threats, market opportunities, changes in technology. That's what you're trying to do. So you're trying to increase agility. And what slows organizations down is friction in these processes. And there's friction when you have 10 different digital asset management systems, and you're working with 15 agencies, and how do you launch something? You know, we worked with Motorola years ago, and it took them a number of years. It used to take them something like 6 weeks to launch, do a global launch of a product. Got it down to 24 hours. They could do it in 24 hours, which was just astounding. So that's the agility, right? That's the increased agility. So your point is that you have to start building agility into these processes. And the only way to do that is to take out the friction, and the only way to do that is to take out those red, bars.
I think we have one more question.
So I just had a quick question. I like the structure that you've given, how to track the progress. In the organizations that we work with, oftentimes there's no stakeholder who would take ownership of something like that. And I'm just wondering, who would you recommend would be the stakeholders who would own that and hold all of the organization that's responsible for staying on top of that and staying ahead of it?
That's such a great question, because what you find is that you have multiple owners across all these different areas. That's why it has to come from the C-suite. It's got to come from the C-suite. Full stop on the story. If it does not come from the CMO, CIO, CEO, you really can't do it. And the last organization we did this major initiative with was CMO and CIO. That's what it was. CMO, CIO reporting to the CEO, and that they were on board, and that's why they could. And they had 14 CTOs who all had to agree on a product hierarchy, or at least sign a piece of paper saying they agreed. So, but to your point, it's very difficult because the natural order of things is separate silos and processes. So you have to have very, very senior leadership. Very good.
Folks, let's take one more question. If we have one more question, we can do that. Otherwise, we will move along with our.
One more question is, where's lunch? Anyone else? Anyone?
Anybody have any last question?
Oh, I finished ahead of time. I don't think I've ever done that in my life. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So, okay, folks, we've completed the morning portion of our second day at DX Summit. Please go across the hallway and enjoy some lunch and browse the vendors that we have in there at the Experience Showcase. Talk to the representatives and learn about some new technologies, and please talk to each other. I think the networking at the event has been really a high point, and I hope all of you are finding the same thing. Thank you very much.